For this session, I wrote 53 words. For this session, I wrote 100 words, and my week's total word count is 719 words. For this session, I wrote 137 words. I rolled my activity die this morning and pulled up exercise. So I did a little home workout because it is absolutely dreary outside. It felt good to move my body. I have been slowly incorporating more exercise, especially since I took most of January off. The other day I went to the gym and I ran a few laps around the track. I started out slow and then picked up the pace as I felt and then stopped when I was good and done, which was probably about maybe 7 minutes of running. Then I went to the sauna for a stretch and breath work session. I used to keep myself to a really strict regimen for exercise, but in this phase of my life, I'm so much more intuitive. And whether it be 5 minutes of activity or 10 or 20, I do not keep track. I just move to how I feel, and that seems to work well for me. It's been such a liberation to not think of exercise in terms of specific time frames or specific repetitions or sets of these repetitions. I certainly do not have a schedule with it. There is no rhyme nor reason to how I move my body. My singular rule for movement is enjoyment, and that seems to work well for me. I used to be the type of person who would be very hard on myself if I had skipped a session, if I'd gone too long without exercise, and now to be in this complete flexibility with exercise is a very different experience, and I think it's so much more refreshing and life-giving. I have been mindful to refrain from phrasing such as, I need to get back in shape, or, oh man, I am out of shape. I more now try to be aware of where I am in that given moment and accept that for what it is without comparing to previous experiences where I was more fit or more active. So this morning's workout was a hodgepodge mix of a kettlebell flow mixed in with body weight movements. And then I sat for my writing session, which I got done this morning, which I am glad for because lately it's been really all over the place in my schedule. I do intentionally break away from a routine just so that I don't put myself into fixation. But I was getting to a point where I was starting to feel a little crazy about my own aberrance. So this morning I jumped to my writing as soon as I could, and I'm so glad I knocked it out. And then my husband and I had some brunch with some provisions we obtained from our local bakery, and we chatted and caught up, and that was nice. But be not fooled. While all of these things sound great and wonderful, it has been a really heavy week for me, and my heart has felt very, very heavy for numerous reasons, which I'm not going to get into. And I wrestled a lot about what I wanted to sit and talk about in front of the camera, second guessing my original plans to run through part 2 of my book haul from last week's adventures. And then after all that back and forth, I decided that books were always a great thing to talk about, so we are going to go through part 2 of my book haul. Before we get into that though, I do want to talk a little bit about The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. I have been really enjoying this. I'm still early in the book, and the way Henry James captures Mrs. Touchette's idiosyncrasies in a nutshell, how she realized early on in her marriage with Mr. Touchette that they were never to really see eye to eye in matters, and that she then took action to make distinct this realization, and then to contrast it with Mr. Touchette's perspective, who would rather have had this be a more vague and nondescript tension in their marriage, I thought was so incredibly profound. moving on to part 2 of my book haul. Some of these books are books I ordered online, so they're all kind of mixed in with this stack. But first up, we have Lucretius, The Nature of Things. Next, we have Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. Next, we have Henry and June by Anaïs Nin. And then Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I'm going to say something potentially contentious. Anaïs Nin is not really my flavor of genre. However, I do feel that she is an author of interest because she does write about really challenging subjects. And for me personally, I do feel that it is important as a writer to read things outside of my comfort zone so that I can stretch my thinking. Next, we have Bend Sinister by Vladimir Nabokov. We have Machiavelli's The Prince and Other Writings, which I've never read The Prince before, and I've always wanted to, so I found this at the bookstore and I grabbed it. The Manticore by Robertson Davies. I believe this is the second of a trilogy. Yes. But in the back it says that it's not necessary to read them in order to appreciate, so I grabbed this. Next we have Morphed by George Sand. Got this beautiful copy on Pango Books. And then I picked up Last Summer in the City by Gianfranco Caligaric. We have A Traveler in Italy by H.B. Morton. It is a huge travel novel, I believe. I don't know if it's fiction or not. It just says travel and literature in the back. Next we have Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. I read this when I was younger and I wanted to revisit it because I wanted to study the structure of fairy tales. Next we have a little bit of an oddball book. This is actually an advanced uncorrected proof that I found in the bookstore, and it's called East Goes West by Young-Hil Kang. My curiosity for this book is that it is in uncorrected form, and I wonder at what that'll read like. We're coming up on the last leg of this haul. Next we have The Fable of the Bees by Bernard Mandeville. Justine by Marquis de Sade. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but this is also a very controversial work. The Red and the Black by Stendhal. And then lastly, we have A History of Reading by Alberto Mengual. That is it for this vlog, and I will see you in the next one.